What's up, everybody? Welcome to the special edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you at least several times a week over the digital airways of YouTube. Usually, I'm spending a little bit of time thanking you because my subscribers and followers have eclipsed 683,000. Appreciate the love and support, but obviously, I'm a news guy, and the news really doesn't get much bigger than this, so let me get right to it. The former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is officially a convicted felon, courtesy of 34 counts, basically all involving falsifying business records. Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts. He is not only the first president that was impeached twice, he is not only the first president that was indicted, but now he is the first president that has ever been, or former president that has been convicted of a felon. And so that's where everybody is at right now. If depending on which side you're on, we all know the predictable responses. If you're on the left, you're celebrating. You're damn near ready to throw a party. You're thinking that he was a phony and a fraud and a criminal, and he was somebody that deserved to be convicted of crimes a long time ago. And then finally, after all of these years, he finally received his comeuppance and got what he deserved, which obviously is a conviction. If you're on the right, you know what they're saying already. The judge, everything was rigged. Donald Trump said it was rigged. The judge, they're accusing the judge of being rigged. They're accusing the jury of being rigged. Everything that you could possibly think of, they're calling this, a flagrant injustice everywhere you turn. Those are their feelings. Here's my immediate feelings. I'm scared as hell. My immediate feelings that I'm scared as hell because it all points to civil war taking place in this country. I'm not advocating that somebody get away with crimes. It's not what I'm saying here. I'm not here to take sides. This ain't about politics to me. This is about the American people, because I think that on far too many occasions, we're all pawns. We're all subject to the mercy of politicians who find a way to manipulate the system and ultimately manipulate us into going up against one another, butting heads against one another, and being uncivilized towards one another. That's a concern that I had before. I had it before January 6th, when the U.S. Capitol was stormed by a bunch of Trump supporters. I've had it ever since. I have it now, because Trump's not going to go away quietly. He's not going to go away. His sentencing is scheduled for July 11th. Before then, he has obviously an opportunity to appeal the decision. And for those who are thinking that this is going to amount to nothing, it's entirely plausible, because you're already having pundits out there saying this may not equate to any jail time. By the way, he's allowed to still run for the presidency. Let's be very clear about that. You got to be a United States citizen. You got to be born in the United States of America. You got to be at least 35 years of age. You got to be, in a country at least 14 years, last 14 years. So they say that as a criteria to be in the president of the United States. He meets that criteria, which means that even though he's now a convicted felon, he can still run for office. He's still the presumptive GOP nominee. You still saw President Biden's administration giving out statements about how to go, encouraging folks to go to the ballot box to make sure that you're not going to vote for him. Well, guess what? That means because he can still run and you can still vote for him. This is, no matter what way you slice it, no matter what side you're on, this ain't a great day for America, because it's damn near scary when you consider how folks are going to react on both sides of the aisle over this ruling. But rather than me get into it from that perspective at this particular moment in time, I'll delay some of my more specific reactions until later on. For the moment, I want to bring in a legal expert. Obviously, he's a lawyer, a renowned lawyer. So let's get that out the way. Got his own law firm, partner in his own law firm. Douglas Hicks, to be exact, Douglas Hicks Law. He's the former attorney, served on the bench with Johnny Cochran for the O.J. Simpson trial. He's my buddy. I lean on him a lot when it comes to legal expertise. The one and only Carl Douglas is here with yours truly, Stephen A. Smith. What's going on, Carl? How are you, sir? How's everything?
Stephen, first of all, thanks so much, my brother, for having me on your show. But let me try to disabuse you of all of that fear. I understand that, but I wanted to disabuse you of that fear, my brother.
Okay, please, take it away.
Sure. What we have here has been an historic day. But the facts be known, there really wasn't any dispute factually about what happened in this case.
Okay.
If truth be known, there really wasn't much doubt, I believe, that the allegations were accurate. What happened instead, because the former president is a great manipulator, he has simply tried to twist what are really undisputed facts, that Stormy Daniels was paid, that there was an understanding of why she was paid, when she was paid. Of course, it was to impact the elections. And of course, Trump paid Michael Cohen back the money. Those facts are not in dispute. But what Trump has done, regrettably, is twisted that. And you hear the allegations of rigged. You hear the talk about how corrupt this judge is. It is unthinkable that any defendant would characterize his own judge as being corrupt. So what has happened, regrettably, is it has simply caused each side, as you have aptly noted, to move into their own corners. But I do not think the prospects are as dire as you fear, because this is only a paper case about paying a porn star. There are 3 other prosecutions that are pending that are far more speaking to the concerns that you express, because it goes to the heart of the former president's attempts to overturn the election, to attack our democracy. And I understand any concerns about those cases, but not this one, I don't think.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, Carl, is this. Work with me here, okay? We've got 11 falsified invoices, 12 falsified ledger entries, and 11 checks falsely recording the repayment as legal, quote, retainers, end quote. So anybody that sees that amount of charges leveled against somebody, the presumption of guilt is definitely going to come attached to it. When we look at the 12 jurors, you know what? They did their jobs according to most folks, okay? We're not going to dispute that. We're certainly not going to sit here and call the former president innocent. Not when he's been convicted on all 34 felony counts, for crying out loud. Nobody's that silly. But work with me here. He's scheduled to be sentenced on the morning of July 11th at Manhattan Supreme Court, all right? That's 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Oh, by the way, the chances are they're saying that he may not even see any jail time. So I guess from a legal perspective, explain to me how somebody that's been convicted on 34 felony counts ain't going to get to see any jail time, because that's what I saw Dan Abrams from News Nation and various others speculating as to what may be a possibility of happening. How is that possible?
Stephen A., add Carl E. Douglas to that list of advisors who tells you he doubts that the former president will ever serve any jail time for this case. The facts are the facts. In 90% of Class E felonies, the person who's convicted does not serve any time in jail. The former president, despite what you may think about him, has no prior record. This is a relatively minor crime because it's only a Class E felony. Class A is a murder. And then when you understand that 90% of people who were convicted never serve time in jail, there's a maximum, of course, of 4 years, but it is not. And Stephen, I would dare to say, were the former president sentenced to any significant time in jail, your concerns could then be greater realized. And I'm sure Judge Mershon echoes and understands that concern. Despite everything that the former president did during the trial and before the trial, despite 10 different findings of contempt, the judge never chose the option of having the former president put into jail, knowing the impact that it could have on the entire nation. I believe Judge Mershon will take that wisdom and exercise discretion in some other ways. But Stephen A., no matter if that happened, I predict his lawyers are going to seek to delay the sentencing for a couple of weeks, for 30 days or so, to make sure it is after the convention. And I predict his lawyers are going to file a notice to appeal. So there's not going to be any imposition of any sentence for months, probably not until years from today.
Carl Douglas, some people out there would ask the question, if the likelihood of him receiving any jail time from opening tap was slim to none, then why go through all of this? How do you answer that question, not just as a legal mind, but an American citizen who has a vote?
Because it is important to exercise and to understand the rule of law. It is important that we exercise and understand that no one is above the law, particularly this president, and particularly his supporters have to understand that. That is the very foundation of our democracy, that no one, even a former president, is above the law. And if you violate the law, you must come to bear, and justice must be exercised freely and fully to the full extent of the law. So the former president chose to fight. That is his right. He stands on the presumption of innocence, but 12 jurors who were fair-minded, who were committed to the process, listened to all the evidence, listened to every question and every answer that was given. And then, after 12 hours of fair deliberations, came unanimously to the conclusion that he's responsible beyond a reasonable doubt for each of the 34 charges against him.
Carl Douglas, Judge Merchan told the jury, if I recall, weeks ago, or if not sooner, that they did not need unanimity to convict. 4 could agree on one crime, 4 on a different one, and the other 4 jurors on another. He said he would treat a 4-4-4 as a unanimous verdict. My question to you is, how common is that? Does that not raise the specter of scrutiny? What do you feel about the judge echoing those sentiments to the jurors? They didn't have to vote in concert, all 12. 4 could feel one way, 4 could feel another, 4 could feel another. When have we seen that before?
That is going to be the $64,000 question that is raised on appeal. Nothing that the defense did trying to cross-examine Michael Cohen is going to result in any sort of an overturn of the verdict. But this theory that the judge decided, given the rarity that these cases are being prosecuted, is going to be the central focus of their appeal. And if there is any chance of that appeal being, or that conviction being overturned, Stephen A., that would be the reasons upon which it is based. Now, everyone on both sides of the ledger, for the prosecution and defense, have briefed the issue well. Judge Merchan has been very careful and has bent over backwards throughout the trial to make sure that the defense is given every opportunity to make their record. He has not been anyone who has made decisions on the fly or without significant consideration, knowing as he does that this will be a case that will live in the annals of legal history forever. So I'm confident, because I don't know the law. I'm not a new law lawyer, but I'm confident, just knowing the way Judge Merchan has conducted this trial, that he is firm in his beliefs, resolute in his legal reasoning, and I'm confident that his decision is going to be supported on appeal. But that is the central issue. I agree.
It is a central issue, and I got to tell you this, because it ultimately came down to it only taking 4 jurors to convict Trump. Essentially, that's what happened. Now, I'm not going to say that's what happened, but that was the situation laid out before them. You didn't need 12 jurors to convict you. You only needed 4. That's number one. Number two, if I remember correctly, we're talking about something considered a relative misdemeanor charge that was elevated to a felony, but whose statute of limitations had expired. What about the notion that the defense can make that argument on appeal, and how effective could that potentially be, Carl Douglas?
Stephen A., one thing you have to understand is in New York, in California, where I practice, and virtually in every other jurisdiction in America, trial verdicts are overturned less than 5% of the time. That means, flip around, 95% of every trial conviction is affirmed on appeal. So when you think of it in that way, you have to be confident that this case will more likely than not be affirmed on appeal. It's not like the parties in this case pulled this theory together quickly. There were reams and reams of research that was done by both sides. The judge and his staff had ample time to analyze and question and challenge the full breadth of the implications of the ruling. Trust me when I say, Stephen A., and your audience should understand, no judge wants to be reversed on appeal. Trust me when I say every judge will do everything in their power to not be reversed on appeal. Judge Merchan has sat and is presided over the largest case in his entire career. He will be known and his legacy will be forged by what happens to this case on appeal. So given the stakes that everyone faces in this particular case, and given how the judge has been fair and has bent over backwards to give the defendants every opportunity to file frivolous motions repeatedly, the judge has given ample time, despite every effort to delay this case past the past November election. But the judge has held firm and been fair. And Stephen A., there's always something that can be the source of an issue on appeal, but it is so rare that it ever is effective. And I think it's not going to happen in this case as well.
You know, it's interesting because before I let you get on out of here, I will say to you, I appreciate the intel. I appreciate your information so much. Thank you for that. But I'm shocked that you don't have an elevated level of fear. I'm looking at a situation right now. Now, he's not going to jail in all likelihood because of this. There were people who were speculating he could simply get to office and then pardon himself. But I'm reading the law here, and it talks about, you know, that only is applicable to state convictions. Right? I'm sorry, to federal convictions, not state ones. That's right. You can't. This is a state crime, so because of that, he can't pardon himself. He can only pardon himself on federal crimes. He can't pardon himself on state crimes. So, but then again, if it's not going to prevent him from winning the election, then it really doesn't matter. I'm shocked that you don't find yourself concerned, considering that he came out there and said it was rigged. You see folks on the right saying it was rigged. They're accusing Judge Merchan of being a liberal. They're accusing jurors of being tainted before the trial even started. So he's basically putting the stuff in play to cause absolute mayhem. How is it that that's not a reason to be concerned, Carl Douglas?
Because, Stephen A., I am blessed to have been living on this earth 69 years. I'm blessed to have been a practicing lawyer for 44 years. I have seen the ups and downs, and I have such confidence and faith in our American system of justice, despite even a Donald Trump and all of the damage that he has done since he has become president, that I remain hopeful and a strong believer that the American system of justice will survive even a Donald Trump. That is how foundationally I am grounded in the strength of the American people and the American justice system. For me, it's not just something that's just happened. This attack is indeed something that is serious. I did not say that I am not concerned. It is, I am vigilant and I am concerned. And that is why I continue going on shows like you to promote the importance and the values that we hold dear, so that even your listeners will understand the threats of what the Donald Trump legacy could have on the very fiber of our people. But I am not of the belief that we will not survive even the Donald Trump era. We've survived famines and pandemics. We've survived racisms and wars. I am confident that we will survive this as well.
You believe that even if Donald Trump still found a way as a convicted felon to win the presidency of the United States in this upcoming election, you still feel that way?
I still have such belief in the strength of the American democracy that I do not think even a second Donald Trump's presidency would be able to overcome the fiber of our democracy. I still think that there are still good people, Republicans, who believe in Donald Trump, but who believe more in the resiliency of the American democracy and would not do anything to help him overturn that democracy. I must continue going to bed each night believing that, Stephen A., and I do.
Carl Douglas, always appreciate you edifying me, edifying our audience, and displaying your passion along with your legal expertise, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, man. Really appreciate it.
Brother, always a pleasure. Please call out, reach out to me. I'm always there for you and your great audience. Have a great day.
Thank you. You do the same. You do the same. The one and only Carl Douglas, famed attorney beside Johnny Cochran and others during the O.J. Simpson trial. Partner in the Douglas Hicks law firm, right here with Stephen A. on the Stephen A. Smith Show over the digital airwaves of YouTube. You heard what he had to say. I've got my own responses right now, so stick around. You're watching the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube. Don't touch that dial. Don't go anywhere. Back with more in a moment. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airways of YouTube, the special edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. I know that, it's basketball going on tonight, and I'm about to go watch this game, Game 5 of the Minnesota Timberwolves hosting the Dallas Mavericks. They're on the brink of elimination. They were on the brink of elimination the other night, but they beat Dallas in Game 4, courtesy of 29 points by Anthony Edwards, 4 3-pointers by Karl Anthony Towns, and they survived and ultimately lived to fight another day. So Game 5 is tonight in Minnesota. We'll see what transpires with that particular game, but there's a reason I'm here anyway. Before I go back to watch the game, it's a special edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, on iHeartRadio, because a former president of the United States, for the first time, is a convicted felon. Courtesy of falsified business records, according to the courts and our legal justice system, Donald Trump was convicted on all 34 felony counts. Now, to be clear, all of the charges were considered Class E or are considered Class E felonies. That's the lowest category of a felony in the state of New York. So chances are it's not going to amount to any jail time for the president of the United States. He already has 3 additional cases, pending against him, including one in Georgia where he was looking for those 11,000 plus extra votes. And so you've got that going on, and that's something that we've got to monitor and keep our eyes on. But clearly, Donald Trump is in a world of trouble, it appears. Some people think it's going to amount to nothing. Other people think that he may end up in jail when all is said and done. I'm not of that mindset. I'm of the mindset where I don't give a damn about Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative. That's not where my mind is at right now. My mind is at right now towards our country and the level of chaos I'm fearful is going to exist in the streets of America. One of the first things I did when the verdict came down is I called my relatives in New York and I said, don't go out. Stay your ass home. Don't go out in those streets tonight, because we don't know what kind of attitude people have. And for those that want to sit up there and say, Stephen, you tripping, I keep reminding y'all, in the 2020 election, Joe Biden won that election, the popular vote. He had 81,283,501 popular votes. The Electoral College votes he had was 306. Donald Trump had 232 electoral votes. He had 74,223,975. With all the stuff that was going on in his previous administration, nearly 75 million people showed up to vote for him. That was before they were pointing the finger at President Joe Biden's cognitive abilities. It was before he had a record as the president that some people on the right will complain about. People on the left ain't complaining about it. They're looking at our economy. They're looking at some of the decisions that he's made. They're looking at some of, the courts. They're looking at a bevy of things, and they're saying, hey, we ain't got no problem with Joe Biden. But the right clearly does. They want their guy in office. So we've got an election coming up in a matter of months, this November. And they keep airing and playing bumbles and stumbles by Joe Biden while looking at Donald Trump roll up in the libertarian place, in the places rife with libertarians that are booing the hell out of him, and he doesn't care. And showing up to rallies in New York where there's thousands, or showing up to rallies in other places where it's flummoxed with people. Yo, he's a threat. I was on Bill Maher's Real Time with Bill Maher with Adam Schiff, Representative Adam Schiff, who's running for the Senate in California. And he was like, make no mistake about it, I know that Donald Trump is a threat. So I'm looking at all of these different things, and I'm saying to myself, excuse me, you went after this guy, and essentially it's a case that basically came down to this accusation. The prosecution argued the records were falsified as part of a scheme Trump devised with his lawyer, Michael Cohen, to conceal a payment to silence adult film star Stormy Daniels about an alleged affair ahead of the 2016 election. He basically wanted to keep everybody from knowing he paid $130,000 in hush money to a porn star. Please understand, his supporters ain't going anywhere. And their attitude is going to be, these sorry-ass politicians have done much worse on both sides of the aisle than our guy. That's what they're going to say. Because we see them on the TV saying it. Now, I ain't one of them. See, to me, it ain't about Trump being in jail. It ain't about him being a convicted felon. I don't want him to be the president of the United States, period. Because I think he's divisive. And I think that he will serve to divide America. And what did he do yesterday? What did he do? Today. Immediately after the verdict came down, it was rigged. It's a sham. It's a miscarriage of justice. We know what they're doing. They're trying to rig the election. They don't want me running against them. I'm the presumptive GOP nominee. They can't beat me. They're trying to steal the election from you, America. What do you think those supporters are going to do? Do you really think they're going to lay down quietly? That's my fear. I appreciate what Carl Douglas said. I appreciate him trying to assuage my concerns. I appreciate him trying to alleviate it to some degree. I understand. But when you're in these streets and you see people, it could be an apartment complex, it could be a delicatessen, it could be a supermarket, it could be a damn nightclub, it could be a bar, it could be anything, where all of a sudden inexplicable mayhem takes place. How can you not be fearful? How can you not be on high alert? How can you not be concerned? That's where I'm coming from. I don't want to hear a damn person coming at me thinking I'm talking politics. I'm not talking politics. I'm not talking. Vote for who you want to. I'm going to vote for who I want to. Do what you got to do. You know where I stand against Donald Trump. I said the man was divisive. The man is a problem. He's not about galvanizing and bringing people together who don't support him. Only those who do. And I think he puts himself before America, regardless of him, make America great again, America first, regardless of all of that. I think he is an individual who is primarily about himself. Narcissism is an appropriate word for him. No matter what anybody says. But guess what? Don't think there's not going to be ripple effects. Don't think he doesn't have his supporters. Don't think he doesn't have millions upon millions of people that feel our justice system is now full of it. Because this happened. They can't even deny it. 11 falsified invoices, 12 falsified ledger entries, 11 checks falsely recording the repayment as legal retainers. You know what they're saying? Is this going to amount to jail? Well, if it's not going to amount to jail, what y'all went through all of this for? Is this going to prevent him from running for the presidency of the United States because he's the presumptive GOP nominee? Is this going to stop him? Then what you do it for? That's what they're going to say. If it doesn't amount to jail time, what the hell you waste our time for? What you waste taxpayer dollars for? That's what they're going to say. Because let me tell you something. It could be the libertarians that were born him. It could be the hardcore, diehard leftists who don't want anything to do with him, don't want him presiding over our country as commander-in-chief. You could bring up Alvin Bragg, the district attorney in the state of New York. You could bring up all of those people. What folks are going to say is he going to jail? Because they want his ass in jail. And if you know you're not going to put him in jail, what was all of this about? Yeah, we know there's 3 other charges coming down the pike like Carl Douglas articulated. But if this ain't the one that'll put him in jail, if these 34 counts that ultimately ended up in an indictment and a conviction doesn't lead to a man that's been convicted on 34 felony counts, albeit Class E felonies, if it doesn't equate to jail time, then what the hell you waste our time for? That's what they're going to say. Which is going to give them fodder to say it was politicized. It was politicized just to keep him out of office. And what is that going to do for them? It's going to galvanize them. It's going to send them to the polls. Now, one of the things that I had my researchers look up, because I want to make sure that I'm clear about this, and I want to make sure that y'all are clear about this. In order to run for the presidency of the United States, you, A, have to be a natural-born citizen. There's 3 categories. You got to be a natural-born citizen. 2, you got to be at least 35 years of age. And C, you have to have been a U.S. resident for at least 14 years. Those are the only 3 criteria. Do you know that as a convicted felon, Donald Trump is still allowed to run for the presidency and to win the presidency? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? Yes, he can. Yes, he can. And I don't mean yes, he can in the way that Obama said, yes, we can. I'm like, yes, he can as a convicted felon. This means nothing. How much you want to make a bet within the next 10 hours Donald Trump is asking for and will receive additional campaign dollars? How much you want to make a bet? I bet my check. That's what we're talking about here. And one of the other things that I think is important, very, very important to bring up, because we can't ignore this. These are the kind of things that we have to pay attention to, because I'm just looking at some of my notes here. But let me be very, very clear, okay? Because it's very, very important that you know this, okay? When I talk about those votes and what have you, there's a concern as it pertains to Biden that folks aren't galvanized enough to show up to the polls. It's going to be too many couch voters out there. I'm going to bring my man Roland Martin on a different day to really, really discuss that, because he's discussed this ad nauseum more so than anybody I know. That's a big fear that he has had. So I had my researchers look up the numbers. In 2012, 126 million voters. That's how many Obama had in 2012 against Mitt Romney. Do you know that 93 million eligible citizens chose not to even vote? 93 million people chose not to vote. 2020, 8 years later, Trump versus Biden. 158,383,403 voters total. 80 million eligible citizens, did not vote. That's still 13 million less than in 2012. But nevertheless, 13 million less. But it was still 80 million eligible citizens that elected not to vote. In 2024, this year, roughly 244 million Americans will be eligible to vote. Ladies and gentlemen, that's nearly 100 million more than in 2020. That's over 100 million, 118 million to be exact, since 2012. You think they all going to Biden? You think they all going to RFK Jr.? You think they're going to Cornel West? Where do you think they're going? It comes down to Trump versus Biden. And what I'm saying is, because he was convicted of this, and because for some reason these people on the right believe they have strong fodder to support incendiary remarks like rigged verdicts, rigged courtroom, rigged juror, rigged judge, future rigged election. That's a reason to be on our P's and Q's. Especially since the likelihood is that he ain't going to be behind bars. Now, one could argue going behind bars might make it worse in terms of what I'm alluding to, the chaos in the streets. One could argue if you put him in jail, that would make it worse. Others would say, hell with that. No, it won't. We don't know the answer to that question. But shit, y'all, is scary. That's all I'm saying. It's scary. And I find myself pissed off because if something like this happens, I mean, how the heck and this is the one knock. This is the one knock. Forget Trump, and all this. Forget all of that. And I told you this wasn't a political conversation, but this is the one thing that I would say politically that really pisses me off. The right is always talking about our Constitution. Our Constitution. Well, why the hell didn't our founding fathers make it so that a convicted felon couldn't run for re-election or for election? How in God's name can you be a convicted felon, therefore stripped of your right to vote? Because convicted felons can't vote. Yet, you can receive votes for the highest office in the land. Can somebody make sense of that to me? You're a convicted felon. You cannot vote for your damn self, let alone anybody else as a convicted felon, to my understanding. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but that's my understanding. You can't vote, period, as a convicted felon. But you can receive millions of votes as a convicted felon for the highest office in the land. It's the President of the United States of America. That don't make no damn sense. Excuse my grammatically incorrect self. It doesn't. Makes no sense whatsoever. But that's our country right now, which is why we should be very concerned. That was my point of doing this podcast tonight, the special edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. I'm scared as hell of what's going to go on in the streets of America over the next few months because of what we witnessed today. Damn it, a jury, 5 women, 7 men, convicted this man of 34 felony counts, falsifying business records essentially. 11 falsified invoices, 12 falsified ledger entries, 11 checks falsely recording the repayment as legal quote-unquote retainers. They said he's guilty. They went through it. Damn it, that's what it is. But what does it amount to if there's no jail time? And he's still a presumptive nominee, and he's still allowed to show up to the Republican nomination, accept nomination as a Republican candidate for the presidency of the United States of America. What does it matter? If you're going to get him, you got to get him. I got news for you. If this don't involve jail time, you ain't get him yet. If this doesn't involve him being denied the GOP nomination, you ain't get him yet. Somebody needs to say it. So damn it, I'm saying it. Last segment of the Stephen A. Smith Show coming your way in a minute. Be right back. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Always appreciate the love and support they give me on the audio side. Thank you so much. Before I get on out of here, I want to give thanks to Carl Douglas Hicks Law Firm in Los Angeles, California. Served on the O.J. Simpson team, led by Johnny Cochran back in the 90s. He's a friend. He's somebody that I know. He's a brilliant legal mind, and I really appreciate him coming on the show. But he's not the only legal mind I will have on here in the days and obviously weeks and months to come. So let me put that out there. Just to remind everybody of the story today, the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, was convicted on all 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, essentially. That's what this really comes down to. We all know this. Because Trump was charged with felonies, in order to convict him, jurors had to have concluded not only that he falsified business records, but also that his purpose in falsifying them was to either commit or conceal another crime, Prosecutors have alleged Trump falsified the records in order to interfere in the 2016 presidential election using, quote, unlawful means, end quote. They alleged actually that Trump used 3 different unlawful means. One was violating federal campaign finance laws through a hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels. B, falsifying yet another business record under New York law, such as bank records tied to former Trump fixer Michael Cohen's payment to Stormy Daniels' lawyer. And C, violating New York tax laws. For those out there who support Trump and consider this much ado about nothing, a sad day for America, a crime, etc., no, this individual was not the former president of the United States. He was a mobster. His name was Al Capone. I'm not comparing the two. I'm simply making the point. They got him on tax evasion, not murder, not racketeering and a whole bunch of other charges. They got him on tax evasion. They got him first. So sometimes you use, the legal system in terms of dollars and cents as it pertains to taxes and things of another nature in order to get your man, because you want to get him at all costs. And it appears that, at least for the time being, that is what Alvin Bragg in the New York State Attorney's Office, or New York District Attorney's Office, rather, decided to do when it comes to Trump. Here's the reality. At some point in time, whether it's this particular conviction on these Class E felonies or convictions that people believe are soon to come with the 3 remaining cases against him, at some point in time, something has to amount to jail time. If he's out, he's not incarcerated, he's free to be the presumptive GOP nominee, soon to be validated as the Republican nominee for the presidency of the United States of America, then you have not done the job. We have to call it like we see it. If somebody is a criminal, I'm not talking about Trump here. I'm speaking hypothetically. I'm speaking to the general populace. I'm speaking to what we all have to deal with. You could be committing all the crimes in the world. You could get arrested every single day. If you're let out and you're still allowed to create mayhem, then the job hasn't been done. The job hasn't been done. We've got people all over the place lamenting the fact that folks are getting arrested and being let out of jail the same day. Well, guess what? That's not justice. And I'll leave it for folks on the left to speak out against Trump, for folks on the right to support him. I'm about America. Streets are going to be crazy. And it's going to get even more hectic as the election approaches. Trump's going to appeal this decision. I'm listening to pundits all over the place talking about the appeal will probably delay the July 11th sentencing in Manhattan Supreme Court in New York. And because it's 4 days before the Republican National Convention. So the Republican National Convention is on July 15th. He's supposed to be sentenced on July 11th. It gets delayed. He's no longer the presumptive nominee. He's the official Republican nominee. Then he's going to show up back in court. You ain't going to send him to jail. They're already speculating that Judge Merchan could easily opt to impose a sentence of probation with no prison time. So folks are going to ask, what was this all for? They're going to adamantly project and verbalize that this whole process was politicized. You know what else they're going to do? They're going to say it was politicized because you want our guy out of the race because you've got no one that can beat him. That's what they're going to say. Biden doesn't feel that way. To his credit, he feels he can take him. And he's got the coffers, backing him up because he's got gobs and gobs of money to campaign. So we know this. And we also saw what the Biden administration said about Trump and about how he's been evading justice for quite some time. Well, here's the problem with that assertion. Joe Biden's son. What you think gonna happen to him? You think everybody ain't watching, ain't gonna look at him and expect a conviction for him too? Because if you're gonna convict the former president of the United States, how come you ain't gonna get the president's son? That's what you're gonna say. That's what you're gonna see people saying. And this level of warfare is going to be at the expense of the American people, because we the ones caught in the middle with folks, somebody in the White House, one or the other. Economic issue, border issues, national security issues, inflation, all of this other stuff going on, crime, all of this stuff happening. And we are the pawns at the mercy of all of this. That's my concern. I'm looking at D.A. Bragg, and I'm looking at him in this press conference, handled himself with professionalism and what have you, did his job, like he said, did his job, gave credit to his staff and the people that worked under him. No problem there, all good. But chances are they don't have to live with the mayhem the rest of us have to live with. And my point is, at some point in time, there has to be closure. We got to get as many and as much complaints if we have had against the American system. Y'all got to understand, in my opinion, I've spoken to my pastor, I've spoken to adult relatives, I've spoken to elders. I'm talking pre-civil rights. I'm talking when we didn't have the right to vote. I'm talking about when our civil rights and our civil liberties were consistently and flagrantly, openly compromised. I'm talking about marching. I'm talking about black folks being hosed down and dogs sicked on us, and all of this other stuff, and being incarcerated for no reason. And I'm telling you, these same people have said to me, they've never seen it as bad as it is right now. I'm not scared because I'm walking the streets and I see crime. Shit, I grew up in New York City, Hollis, Queens. Born and raised in the Bronx. Born in the Bronx, raised in Hollis, Queens. New York native practically all my damn life. The boroughs, Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island. Long Island ain't far away. Crime all the time. I ain't scared of no damn crime. That's par for the course. So why am I scared now? Because I got elders that have experienced times that we thought couldn't get any worse. And they're saying this is worse because they're fearful of the mayhem. At some point, y'all, not as voters, not as constituencies, not as party affiliates, as American citizens, at some point, we got to come together on this one issue, demanding that a moral compass exist with standards that are consistent, that apply to everyone, no exceptions. That's where we got to get to. I'm talking about as American citizens, as the peeps that got to live in these streets. The former president of the United States left the courtroom today. He got on traffic on the FDR Expressway in New York City. I would know. I take it all the time. Traffic moved aside to let him through. They ain't doing that for you. But when he came out, he was surrounded by Secret Service folks and other security members and lawyers and all of this other stuff. That ain't happening for you. He getting penalized with $434 million lawsuits that get reduced to $175 million if he could pay it in a certain amount of time. And then all of a sudden that gets stalled. That ain't happening to you. He just got convicted on 34 felony counts, albeit Class E felonies. Went in front of the microphone and said, it's BS, it's rigged. He even brought up George Soros and whatever folks that support the liberals and how they rigged all of this other stuff. That don't happen for you. He's going to come out and say, I need more campaign dollars. His son, Eric Trump, was trying to pimp folks for support on Memorial Day. You can't do that. I can't do that. Everywhere you turn, every time you turn around, there's something that should remind you that's their world. We're the ones living in the real world. as brothers, as sisters, as Americans, we got to get back to a place where a standard was demanded. No exceptions. You can't divide our country and turn it into mayhem and chaos, no matter what side you're on. We got to do that. Otherwise, we're screwed forever. Ain't no underground tunnels or bunkers we get to hide in. We ain't surrounded by Secret Service agents and all of this other stuff. We don't have the political apparatus protecting us from the average everyday American citizen. We out here having to fend for ourselves. Wake the hell up. Be ultra concerned and ultra diligent in doing what we can to improve the state of affairs going on in our society. Or else, and you know what that or else could mean. Might be good for them. It ain't good for us. Got to get on out of here. I got a basketball game to go watch because my day job calls for me to cover the NBA playoffs. So I got to get on out of here. But I'll holler at y'all sometime tomorrow. Until then, peace and love, everybody. God bless all of y'all. If ever we needed it, we need it now.